Chapter 1. Dad, I've decided to accept Professor Wallace's invitation to pursue my graduate studies in the U.S. If you've made up your mind, that's fine, but what about your wedding to Ethan? Hearing the tentative tone in her father's voice, Aurora Hayes swallowed the bitterness in her throat. I want to call off the engagement with the Blackwoods. A long silence followed on the other end of the line. All right, I'll talk to the Blackwoods. It will take about half a month to get your visa sorted, so you can start preparing your things. Just as Aurora hung up, Ethan Blackwood walked into the bedroom, loosening his tie. He seemed a little surprised to see her awake. After getting into bed, his strong arm wrapped around her waist, his hand exploring her body. How are you getting so thin? A bride should have a little more meat on her bones. It feels better to the touch. The man's warm breath tickled the back of her neck, and the stray hairs on his forehead brushed against her skin like a kitten scratching an itch. I don't feel well tonight, Aurora pushed his hand away. If she hadn't seen him kissing another woman so passionately, she might have melted into this moment of bliss. But now, it was time for the dream to end. Ethan's breathing steadied into a peaceful rhythm. Aurora turned to look at his handsome face, tears silently soaking into the pillow. She had first met him at a university lecture where he was an invited guest speaker. It was a cliché case of love at first sight, and for the next 4 years, she had chased after him relentlessly. He was the sole heir to his family's fortune, having taken over the family business at a young age and leading it to unprecedented success. For him, Aurora forced herself to study business management, a subject she had absolutely no interest in. For him, Aurora put down her paintbrushes, arming herself with corporate knowledge just to get a job at his company, to be a little closer to him. For him, Aurora, who had never cooked, learned to prepare 3 meals a day to care for his chronic stomach problems. For 4 whole years, she had pursued Ethan with a fiery passion. But his heart, as cold and distant as a saint's, had never once looked down from its pedestal to notice her. Just as she was about to give up, the man who never looked back suddenly turned, walked towards her, took her hand, and announced in front of everyone, "From this day on, Aurora Hayes is my girlfriend." That night, he treated the entire company to a celebratory dinner and kissed her in front of them all. A few days later, he formally visited her father to ask for her hand in marriage. Then came the engagement party. She could still remember the magnificent scene. The entire hall was filled with her favorite red velvet roses, and the ring he gave her was a family heirloom. Everyone congratulated her for finally winning over the infamous Ice Mountain, Ethan Blackwood. That day, Aurora truly believed she was the happiest person in the world. She failed to notice that the man beside her was even more sullen and quiet than usual. Ethan drank a lot that night. When she was taking him home, they ran into his sister, Rosalie Blackwood. In the 4 years she had pursued Ethan, Aurora had seen Rosalie many times. Ethan was very good to his sister. The icy fortress around his heart only seemed to melt, if only slightly, when he was with her. "Rosalie, come and greet your sister-in-law," Ethan said casually, his arm around Aurora's waist as he beckoned Rosalie over. Aurora blushed and shyly looked away. But the young woman across from them suddenly choked up, tears welling in her eyes. "Are you really going to do this to me?" Aurora was confused. Before she could process it, Ethan tilted her chin up and kissed her domineeringly, right in front of Rosalie. Aurora didn't know when Rosalie left. She only knew that when Ethan finally released her, the space in front of them was empty. Aurora gasped for air, her heart feeling like it would pound out of her chest. When she looked up again, the man before her seemed like a completely different person. "It's late. I'll have my driver take you home," Ethan said, his voice cold. For some reason, she felt the chill emanating from him was 3 times colder than usual. Later, she learned from Ethan's parents that Rosalie was their adopted daughter. She and Ethan shared no blood relation. The look in Rosalie's eyes that night had been one of desperate, broken attachment, more like romantic love than sisterly affection. But at the time, drunk on happiness, Aurora hadn't delved any deeper. After the engagement, she and Ethan officially moved in together. He was a workaholic who often lost track of time, and he was frequently forced to drink heavily at business dinners. Over the years, he had developed severe stomach problems. After they started living together, Aurora took over all of his daily needs. But aside from sharing meals, they had almost no time together as a couple. Ethan was so busy that Aurora saw him even less than before. A year passed like this, with absolutely no physical intimacy between them. Aurora agonized over it for a long, long time. She even swallowed her pride and tried to hint at her desires, wearing a revealing nightgown. But Ethan remained unmoved, his eyes filled with an endless distance. "I'm a bit traditional. I think it's better to save certain things for after we're married." Aurora bit her lip. "Then when are we getting married? I've been really busy lately. I can't squeeze in the time." Over that year, Aurora heard many similar excuses and deflections. Just as she was about to give up on the matter, Ethan came to her. He was drunk that night, his handsome eyes hazy. His well-defined fingers traced the lines of her face, finally coming to rest gently on her eyelids. "I love your eyes," he murmured. This rare sweet nothing from him made her heart flutter. As he caressed and kissed her, Aurora gradually lost herself in the moment, failing to notice that the name he mumbled in the depths of his passion sounded less like Aurora and more like Rosalie. Aurora never worried about another woman coming between them. He was as cold and detached as a monk. Aside from her, there had never been any other women in his life. But she never imagined that she was the other woman. The moments she had cherished as happiness were, in fact, stolen from someone else. The day Rosalie returned, Ethan came to the art studio to pick her up. Sitting at the dinner table, Aurora once again saw the same pitiful young woman who had stood on the stairs years ago. This time she had a man with her. Rosalie introduced him to the family. "This is my boyfriend. We're planning to get married." No one else seemed to notice, but Aurora saw Ethan's back go ramrod straight. Having been with him for 3 years, she had learned to read his habits. Whenever he was nervous, his back would unconsciously stiffen. "I sent you abroad to study, not to start dating." Ethan's voice was laced with fury. Rosalie bit her lip and continued to defy him. "I'm an adult now. I have the right to make my own decisions. You're my sister. I won't allow you to date this early." Ethan's domineering tone carried a hint of obsession. The atmosphere at the table grew frigid. Aurora tried to calm him down, tugging on his arm, but he violently shook her off. A glass of red wine tipped over, spilling across Aurora's white dress. In that instant, it felt as though the wine had spilled all over her heart. She went to the restroom to clean her dress. When she came out, she saw Ethan dragging Rosalie into a room, his actions forceful and rough. Worried the siblings' fight would get out of hand, she went to intervene. But as she reached the doorway, she peered through the slightly ajar door and witnessed a scene that shattered her world. Ethan had Rosalie pressed fiercely against the wall, his lips devouring hers in a kiss that was both urgent and passionate. The kiss lasted a long time. "You can only be mine." Rosalie wrapped her arms around his neck like a delicate clinging vine. "But you're not mine, you don't want me, and you're going to marry someone else." Her words seemed to bring Ethan back to his senses, but he still didn't release the small woman in his arms. "Regardless, I forbid you from dating." With that, Ethan let go of Rosalie and strode out of the room. Though she was his rightful fiancée, Aurora felt like a mistress caught in the act. She scrambled back to the dining table just before he emerged. Ethan had already straightened his disheveled collar, resuming his usual cool and detached demeanor as he slowly sat down beside her. A few moments later, Rosalie also returned to the table, her lips red and swollen. Aurora looked closely at the young woman before her. Those beautiful, doe-like eyes were surprisingly similar to her own. No, that wasn't right. It was her own eyes that resembled Rosalie's. In that moment, many details that Aurora had long forgotten came flooding back with crystal clarity. The name he had whispered in the heat of passion, his comment about loving her eyes, his hot and cold attitude, everything suddenly had an explanation. Aurora spent the next few days investigating the history between the siblings. It had been Ethan's decision to adopt Rosalie. When he was 7, he met 5-year-old Rosalie, who had run away from an orphanage. That very day, Ethan begged his parents to adopt her. Throughout Rosalie's childhood, Ethan was the one who primarily cared for her. His parents said they had never seen Ethan be so patient with anyone. Though he wasn't much older than her, he insisted on doing everything for her himself. He carried her school bag for her. When she was bullied, he would rush over without a second thought to defend her. When she had a cold or fever, he would stay by her bedside, refusing to eat or drink until she was better. Everything had been fine until 3 years ago, when Rosalie turned 18. The two had a massive fight about something. Afterward, Rosalie decided to study abroad, and Ethan announced his engagement to Aurora. Ethan's parents sighed with regret when they mentioned how the siblings' relationship had suddenly turned cold. Kids get complicated when they grow up. It's not our place to ask. Hopefully, now that Rosalie is back, they can patch things up. When Aurora left the Blackwood estate, she was completely numb, so that was it. Ethan's feelings for Rosalie, which he thought were brotherly affection, had long since blossomed into love. Rosalie's passionate confession on her 18th birthday had frightened him. That was why he had staged a high-profile engagement with Aurora to drive Rosalie away. He had chosen Aurora not because he saw her devotion, but because among his many admirers, only she had eyes so similar to Rosalie's. Once everything was clear, Aurora felt her entire existence was a joke. 7 years of love had been exchanged for utter exploitation. Aurora had thought she could eventually warm Ethan's heart, but she never realized his heart had already been given to someone else. In that moment, Aurora made her decision. This farce had to end. From this day forward, she would no longer love Ethan Blackwood. She was done with him. Chapter 2. The next morning, Aurora was woken by her alarm, a reminder to prepare her application materials for studying abroad. All these years, even while chasing after Ethan, she had never stopped painting. Professor Wallace greatly admired her work and had offered her the opportunity to pursue advanced studies. Originally, Aurora had declined. She didn't want to leave Ethan, afraid that something might threaten their impending marriage. Thinking back on it now, she felt utterly ridiculous. When Aurora went to the study to prepare her documents, she was surprised to find Ethan still at home. "I need to use the computer." Ethan, his eyes glued to his phone, grunted in acknowledgement and went into the bathroom. He never once looked up at her. Aurora sat at the desk, opened the application software, and began filling out the forms. But an icon in the corner of the screen kept flashing. It was Ethan's messaging app. "Brother, I'm at the hotel now. If you don't come, I'll call my boyfriend." Following the message, Rosalie sent 2 pictures. One was her hotel room number, and the other was a tantalizing glimpse of long legs in white stockings. Before Aurora could react, a loud noise came from the bathroom. Ethan burst out of the room and stormed out of the apartment, leaving only the sound of a slamming door in his wake. Aurora sat stunned for a long time before closing Ethan's messaging app and returning to her application. After submitting her information, she began to pack up everything that belonged to her in the apartment. When she first moved in, she had lovingly decorated every corner. The few photos of her and Ethan, and the countless portraits she had painted of him. Matching couples' mugs, couples' toothbrushes, couples' bath towels, couples' pajamas. Ethan rarely used them, but she always bought things in pairs for their home. As she packed them away, she realized that many of the items were still brand new. There was so much stuff. She made trip after trip downstairs to the dumpster, throwing things away for what felt like an eternity. When Aurora finally returned to the apartment for a drink of water, she noticed a new friend request on her phone. It was the same profile picture she had just seen. She knew it was Rosalie. Chapter 3. Looking up at the clock on the wall, she realized a full half-day had passed. Ethan never had the habit of telling her his schedule, but she knew exactly where he would be right now. After accepting the request, Rosalie didn't say anything, but Aurora saw her latest post. "Hope the one I love can always be by my side." The accompanying picture was of a man's back. She had been with Ethan for 3 years and had painted his back countless times. She recognized it in a single glance. There was a deep hickey on the man's neck. Aurora exited the app, turned off her phone, a bitter taste filling her mouth. When Ethan returned that evening, he brought a dessert with him, a rare occurrence. "Rosalie said girls like this, so I bought one for you to try." Aurora glanced at it. It was a strawberry cake. "It certainly is something a little girl would like, but I'm allergic to strawberries." Ethan froze for a moment. "Sorry, I didn't know." She didn't say it was okay. Instead, she turned and walked back to the bedroom. Ethan stood there, stunned, for a moment before following her into the bedroom and sitting on the edge of her bed. "Are you angry?" His voice was cautious and tinged with a gentleness she had once cherished. But now, why did it make her stomach turn? "No, I'm just a little tired." Aurora turned onto her side and closed her eyes to rest. The man behind her sat there for a long time before slowly getting up. I'll sleep in the study then, you get some rest. The next morning, Ethan did something unheard of. He went into the kitchen. Get up and eat something. Consider it my apology for the strawberry cake yesterday. Aurora stared at the picture-perfect omelet in front of her, an indescribable feeling churning inside her. You can cook. A little, I don't do it often. As he spoke, Ethan leaned over and ruffled her hair. If you want it in the future, I can make it for you more often. There would be no future. She picked up her spoon and began to eat, one bite at a time. Ethan sat across from her and thoughtfully poured her a glass of juice. By the way, are a lot of things missing from the apartment? Did we get robbed? She shook her head. I just did some cleaning up. Well, is there anything we need to buy? I'm free today, I can go shopping with you. Aurora looked up at the man before her. His eyes, which were usually frosted over, now seemed to shimmer like a spring lake. What was he playing at? I have to go to the art studio today. The director asked me to be a guest teacher for the children's class. I can't get away. Then I'll go with you. Ethan's unexpected clinginess was starting to annoy her. Just then, his phone buzzed several times. When he looked up again, there was an unnatural flicker in his eyes. Rosalie says she wants to see our marital home. Aurora's hand paused. Her immediate instinct was to refuse. But before she could speak, Ethan was already on his feet. She's already downstairs. I'll go get her. She never had the right to refuse his decisions. Her only role was to play along. Chapter 4. A few moments later, there were voices at the door. Rosalie was dressed in a sweet, innocent-looking dress, a stark contrast to the image of the white-stockinged legs from the day before. Aurora felt a wave of nausea. Hello, Aurora. I wanted to see my brother's new home. I hope I'm not disturbing you. She waved her hand, feeling speechless. Come in. Ethan casually took the fruit and gift box from Rosalie's hands and thoughtfully fetched a pair of slippers for her. It's getting cold. Don't go barefoot. Rosalie slipped her feet into them as he held them out. She sniffed the air dramatically, her gaze finally landing on the omelet in front of me. Omelet, I haven't had this in so long. Brother, you actually made my favorite omelet for my sister-in-law. The girl's eyes reddened slightly, her voice thick with grievance. Ethan ruffled her hair. If you want some, I'll make it for you again. Just sit down and wait. Rosalie sat down across from Aurora, completely at ease as if it were her own home, and helped herself to a bowl and chopsticks. Aurora, I haven't had my brother's omelet in 3 years. I wonder if he's gotten rusty. He used to make it for me whenever I wanted. I missed it so much when I was abroad. Aurora looked down at the omelet before her. The tiny spark of warmth she had felt moments ago seemed to curdle into an endless pool of acid, eating away at her already ravaged heart. Aurora couldn't hold it back any longer. She bolted to the bathroom and retched until her stomach was completely empty. Rosalie stood outside the bathroom door, looking extremely uncomfortable. Sister-in-law, did I say something wrong? She didn't need to answer. Ethan naturally stepped in to comfort Rosalie. She's been under a lot of stress lately. I'll take her to the doctor later. It has nothing to do with you. They seemed to be saying more, but Aurora couldn't hear it, nor did she want to. How disgusting. Everything, all of it, was just so disgusting. Chapter 5. Ethan got a call from his company and had to leave for a 3-day business trip. Looking at his guilty expression, Aurora actually felt a sense of relief. At least she would have 3 days of peace. 3 days later, he closed a huge deal. That night, he threw a celebration party for the entire company. Perhaps because he was in high spirits, he drank far more than usual. Around midnight, his assistant called her. Miss Hayes, Mr. Blackwood has had a lot to drink and is complaining about his stomach. Could you come and pick him up? She instinctively got out of bed and started dressing. Send me the address. By the time she hung up, she was already fully dressed. Even though she was preparing to leave him, taking care of him had become a deeply ingrained habit. Grabbing the stomach medicine she always kept for Ethan, she drove to the restaurant. Just as she got out of the car, she saw a figure, graceful as a butterfly, rush into the building. It was Rosalie. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. She took a deep breath before getting out and heading towards the private room. As she neared the door, she overheard a conversation between Ethan's assistant and a secretary. Did you call his fiancée too? The secretary asked. Yeah. For the past 3 years, hasn't she always been the one to take care of Mr. Blackwood when he drinks too much? The assistant replied, sounding confused. What do you know? It used to be his sister who took care of him. It's only been his fiancée for the last 3 years because his sister was studying abroad. The assistant was still puzzled. But she's his fiancée. The past is the past. Shouldn't she be the one to handle these things from now on? You just don't get what Mr. Blackwood is thinking. Their voices faded as they walked away. Her hands, hidden in her sleeves, clenched into tight fists. So, she was the only one who didn't know she was a substitute. Reaching the private room, she looked through the glass window and saw Ethan nestled in Rosalie's arms like a lazy kitten. "Rosalie, my stomach hurts. Brother, I brought you your medicine." Aurora watched as Rosalie took out a bottle of stomach pills, the same brand Ethan always used. She had once tried to get him to switch to a different medication because he had developed a tolerance to this one, and it no longer soothed the burning in his stomach. When she had tried to throw the old bottle away, he had flown into an inexplicable rage. At the time, she didn't understand why. Now it was clear. Her concern had always been superfluous. Suddenly, her love felt so cheap. Like a beggar wagging its tail, waiting for a god-like handout from him. Inside the room, the two were locked in a passionate kiss. Aurora walked away and leaned against her car. The autumn night air was chilly. She had left in a hurry, wearing only a thin jacket. A cool draft slipped through her sleeves, sending a shiver through her entire body. Half an hour later, Rosalie emerged, supporting a very drunk Ethan. The moment she saw Aurora, Rosalie's rabbit-like eyes darted around nervously. Aurora walked over and draped Ethan's arm over her own shoulder. "Thank you for your trouble." After she settled Ethan into the back seat, Rosalie stood behind her, wringing her hands anxiously and mumbling. "He drank too much. You can make him some honey water tomorrow morning. It will help his stomach." The young woman in front of her couldn't meet her eyes. In those perpetually watery eyes, there was shame, guilt, and reluctance. Because they were both women in love, Aurora could strangely empathize with her situation. She was leaving anyway. She didn't want to become a bitter, resentful woman. She nodded. "I've called a car for you. Let me know when you get home." Rosalie looked up in surprise, perhaps not expecting her to be so calm. Just moments ago, outside the private room, their eyes had met for a split second. Rosalie knew she was watching. And in that exact moment, Ethan had kissed her. "I'm sorry, I can't live without him." After getting home, Aurora dragged Ethan to the bedroom. As she laid him down, the momentum caused her to fall beside him. He instinctively wrapped his arms around her waist, burying his head in the hollow of her collarbone. "Rosalie, wait for me, I'll make things clear." Aurora's heart clenched, and her eyes filled with tears. The emotions she had suppressed for so long finally burst forth. She cupped his face in her hands. "Ethan, look at me. I'm not Rosalie." His eyes were hazy for a moment. "Aurora?" The moment he said her name, she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. But he had already fallen into a deep sleep. After crying for most of the night, she finally drifted off to sleep around dawn. But she hadn't been asleep for long when Ethan burst into the room and pulled her up. "Did you call the car that took Rosalie home yesterday?" Her head was heavy and groggy, as if filled with lead. "Yes. Do you have any idea she was in a car accident? Why didn't you make sure she got home safely?" "If anything happens to Rosalie, I won't let you get away with it." He shoved her back onto the bed and stormed out. Aurora tried to get up, but the world was spinning. She raised a hand to her forehead. It was burning hot. She managed to grab her phone from the bedside table, her first instinct to call Ethan. But the image of his furious face flashed in her mind. She closed her contacts and dialed 911 instead. Chapter 6. When Aurora woke up, she was in a hospital. "You're finally awake. It's a good thing you called when you did, or the fever could have caused serious damage." Your phone kept ringing. "We saw a contact listed as fiancé and told him about your situation, but he didn't seem to believe us. There are some fees and forms here that need a signature." The nurse's words echoed in her ears. "I'll sign them." Aurora pushed herself up and signed the papers. The nurse handed her the phone. Just then, a call came through from Ethan. "Rosalie told me you know about us. I'll explain everything. I understand that you're angry and hurt, but you can't play games with Rosalie's life. I'm the one who wronged you, but Rosalie has done nothing to you. And now you're hiring people to act, pretending you're in a coma with a high fever. Aurora, I never knew you could be so devious." At that, she hung up the phone. She had never imagined that the man she saw as a cold, detached saint could be so blind and clueless. He loved Rosalie and used her as a shield, yet he offered not a single word of apology, only accusations. They had shared a bed for 3 years. In his mind, she, Aurora Hayes, was nothing more than a scheming, manipulative villain. In that moment, she was filled with regret. Regret for loving the wrong person, regret for wasting 7 years of her youth on a dog. She couldn't bear to live like this for another day. Ethan was still calling her. She blocked his number, settled the hospital bill, and went directly to the Blackwood estate. Today was Mrs. Blackwood's birthday. Looking at the Blackwood family heirloom on her hand, she slowly took it off and placed it in an exquisite jewelry box. What didn't belong to her should be returned. The Blackwood manor was brightly lit. When she walked in, the people inside were a little surprised. "Aurora, why is your face so pale? Why didn't you come with Ethan?" She had no energy for small talk. The weakness from the fever made every step feel incredibly heavy. Facing the concerned and curious gazes, she managed a faint smile. She walked straight to Mrs. Blackwood. When Mrs. Blackwood saw her, her expression soured for a moment. Her father had already spoken to the Blackwoods about calling off the engagement. The Blackwoods were one of the most prominent families in the area. They hadn't looked down on her family back then, so for her family to be the one to break the engagement now was a blow to their pride. For 3 years, Mrs. Blackwood had treated her like her own daughter, and for that, she was grateful. "Mrs. Blackwood, I'm so sorry. Thank you for taking care of me all these years. Please take this back." She offered the jewelry box with both hands. Mrs. Blackwood hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Are you really sure? Has there been some misunderstanding between you two?" She shook her head. "I'm sure. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused." With that, she bowed deeply and turned to leave. Just as she reached the door, Ethan suddenly walked in, his eyes filled with a cold fury. "Aurora, you dare to block me." She was already unsteady on her feet, but she refused to show him any weakness. "Mr. Blackwood, is there something I can do for you?" "Mr. Blackwood?" Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "Do you know that Rosalie was in a car accident? Her leg is broken, she's a dancer. This is a devastating blow for her. Even if you're resentful, you can't do this to her. Come with me and apologize." Ethan grabbed her hand and tried to pull her along. She stumbled, nearly falling to the ground. Once she regained her footing, her own temper flared, and she violently shook him off. "Get it straight, Mr. Blackwood, I just called a car for her. It was a ride-share service. I'm sorry she got into an accident, but how is that something I could control?" Aurora had never spoken to Ethan like this before, her voice hoarse as she screamed with all her might. Ethan froze for a second, as if finally noticing her condition. "Are you not feeling well?" She didn't want to cry, but tears streamed down her cheeks like pearls from a broken string. "What does it have to do with you?" Sensing the despair and coldness in her tone, a flicker of anxiety actually appeared in his eyes. She must be seeing things. How could he possibly care about her? He just wanted her to go apologize to Rosalie. "Come with me to the hospital." Ethan grabbed her wrist possessively, trying to drag her forward. She struggled against him. "I told you, I didn't cause Rosalie's accident. I'm not going to the hospital." "Ethan, you really are heartless." After saying that, she could no longer hold on and fainted. The patient had a fever of 104 degrees yesterday. It just broke, and this is how you, her fiancé, are taking care of her. Don't think a high fever isn't serious. At that temperature, it can affect all the internal organs. In severe cases, the damage can be permanent. Can't you be more responsible? Aurora woke up groggily and saw Ethan outside the door, head bowed, as he was being scolded. Thinking about everything that had happened at the Blackwood Manor, tears trickled from the corners of her eyes. The door opened and closed. She knew Ethan was standing by her bed. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you really had a fever." "Don't worry, I'll still marry you. I'll handle the situation with Rosalie. Just rest and get well." His footsteps faded, followed by the soft click of the closing door. Aurora could no longer hold back her sobs, burying her face in the pillow and crying her heart out. He would marry her? That was the best joke she had ever heard in her life. He didn't love her, yet he promised to marry her. Was she that cheap? The heart that had throbbed for him for 7 years turned completely to ash in that moment. Chapter 7. She was in the hospital for 3 days. When she was discharged, Ethan, surprisingly, came to pick her up. Rosalie needs surgery, so she needs someone with her constantly. Looking at his slightly guilty expression, Aurora's heart felt nothing. Ethan reached for her luggage, but Aurora silently moved it away. I know there's been a misunderstanding. Can we go home and talk things through properly? There was a hint of pleading in Ethan's voice. She turned her head to look at the face she once adored. What was he pitying? Let's just talk here. What do you want to say? Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. Then let's go to the coffee shop next door. They walked to the coffee shop in silence. Staring at the man across from her, Aurora imagined what he might say next. I just made a mistake that any man would make. I'm sorry, the person I've always loved is Rosalie. Getting engaged to you was just a way to escape. The person I love is you. I know I was wrong. These lines had echoed in her mind 1,000 times. She thought it would be one of them. But she never expected him to say, I will marry you, that's the truth. The man before her was looking at her with absolute seriousness. Her heart seized and she waited for his explanation. But Ethan said nothing more. Aurora laughed. You asked me here just to tell me this? Yes, I know you're worried I'll call off the wedding, but I won't. Ethan spoke with such sincerity that anyone who didn't know better would think he was deeply in love with her. That nauseating feeling rose in her stomach again. Ethan, what makes you think that after I've found out what a two-faced person you are, I would still want to marry you? You're in love with your sister, kissing her in the study, spending passionate nights with her in hotels, and now you're telling me you'll marry me? I was blind to love you, not stupid. Her throat felt like it was being squeezed shut. She fought to keep her voice from trembling, but it still came out shaky. Ethan's eyes flickered, and he could barely meet her gaze. The person you love is me. Isn't it enough that I'm by your side? Enough! Aurora was once again stunned by Ethan's shamelessness. What about Rosalie, then? What are you planning to do about her? Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line, his fists clenched. That's between us. It has nothing to do with you. So, according to you, I'll be your wife, but your affair with another woman has nothing to do with me. Ethan, you're pathetic. Aurora stood up to leave, unable to stand the sight of his face for another second. But because she moved so suddenly, a waiter behind her didn't have time to react. Scalding hot coffee spilled onto her arm, instantly raising a red welt. Ethan shot up, concerned. Are you okay? The waiter was still frozen in shock until Ethan yelled at him. Get some ice. Aurora watched Ethan's frantic display, a single tear rolling down her cheek. If she hadn't just heard what he said, she might have actually believed he cared about her. It turned out she had been deluding herself all along. It was her own fantasy, placing Ethan on a pedestal like some infallible god. The real Ethan wasn't worthy of her love at all. As she silently wiped her tear away, she saw a small, delicate figure in pink outside the window. It was Rosalie. Seeing her frozen in place, Ethan followed her gaze and saw Rosalie too. The moment their eyes met, Rosalie turned to run. But her leg was broken, and she wasn't used to the crutches yet. The sudden movement made her lose her balance and fall to the ground. Ethan shot forward like a bullet, brushing harshly against Aurora's freshly injured arm as he passed. The fragile, blistered skin broke, oozing blood and fluid. Aurora watched the two figures clinging to each other in the distance, then turned and walked away. After getting her wound treated at a clinic, Aurora booked the earliest flight to the United States. As she was boarding, an unfamiliar number called her. Aurora, where are you? She hung up, pulled the SIM card from her phone, and threw it into a trash can at the airport. A few hours later, she landed in the United States. Chapter 8. After getting Rosalie settled, Ethan was about to head home when he got a call from the office about an urgent business trip. He wanted to let Aurora know, but when he tried to call, he remembered he was blocked. Even if the number was blocked, she could still receive text messages. He, who rarely sent texts, composed a message. I'm going on a business trip. When I get back, we'll go take our wedding photos. Wait for me. He assumed Aurora would be overjoyed. Aurora had loved him for 7 years. Every time he looked back, she was always there. Even though he had never once said he loved her, but Aurora would always be there. During the business trip, Aurora didn't call once. Even his assistant noticed something was wrong. Mr. Blackwood, did you make Miss Hayes angry? Ethan thought back to their last meeting and nodded. To make a great girl like Miss Hayes that angry, you must have really messed up, Mr. Blackwood. The assistant's teasing tone made Ethan pause. Realizing he'd overstepped, the assistant quickly covered his mouth. "Mr. Blackwood, I didn't mean it like that." "It's fine. If you make a girl angry, how do you fix it?" Ethan asked seriously. The secretary chimed in, "Girls are all the same. When your sister used to get angry, you just buy her a little gift and everything would be fine." "Aurora is different." Ethan said it instinctively. Seeing the confused looks on their faces, he couldn't explain why himself. In his mind, Aurora and Rosalie were different. Aurora never cried or complained, never demanded anything, and certainly never acted coy. She seemed to love painting. When she sat in a corner with the sunlight pouring over her, she had a gentleness that was otherworldly. Rosalie was rarely ever still. "If I want to make my fiancé happy, what kind of gift should I buy?" This was the first time Ethan had ever put thought into doing something for Aurora. "If my girlfriend is angry, the simplest thing is to buy her a gift, but that only works if the problem isn't too serious. If the reason for the fight is something major, then I need to seriously reflect on my actions, figure out what I did wrong, and then ask for her forgiveness. Only then will my girlfriend stop being angry. After all, being angry is bad for your health. I wouldn't want her to get sick because of me." The assistant analyzed the situation with a serious expression, his eyes full of happiness. The secretary, sensing this was not the right direction, nudged him. "That's you. Mr. Blackwood isn't like you." Ethan didn't say anything, but he had heard every word. Before heading home, he went to a jewelry store and bought an exquisite necklace, planning to have a real talk with Aurora. But the moment he opened the door to their apartment, he froze. A thin layer of dust had settled on everything. The air was stale. It was obvious no one had lived here for a long time. A heavy feeling settled in Ethan's chest. "Aurora?" Ethan searched the apartment, a growing panic rising in his heart. The bedroom closet was empty. The space where Aurora's dresses used to hang was bare. In the art studio, the paints and canvases that were once scattered about were now gone, as if they had grown wings and flown away. Aurora, after searching every room, Ethan was finally forced to accept the reality. Aurora hadn't lived here for a long time. Everything related to her had been cleared out. All the memories they shared had been erased. Ethan sat numbly on the sofa, trying to figure out when she had decided to leave. He thought for a long time but couldn't understand, so he stopped trying. He dialed Aurora's number again. "The number you have dialed is not in service. Not in service." The weight in his chest grew heavier. He didn't believe it. He didn't believe Aurora would just leave like that. Maybe it was because he had abandoned her at the hospital to go to Rosalie. She was angry. Maybe Aurora was just throwing a tantrum, running away from home. She must have left a clue for him to find her. He would definitely find her. Clinging to this stubborn thought, Ethan drove to Aurora's art studio. Oh, Aurora quit a month ago. He staggered out of the studio. A month ago. But she had told him just recently that she was going to work at the studio. Why did she lie to him? Before, he had never imagined Aurora would leave him. Because whenever he looked back, she was always there, within his line of sight. But now, it seemed Aurora was really gone. Even if he turned around to look for her, he couldn't find her. Ethan clutched his chest, a dull ache spreading through it. It felt like someone was slowly, tortuously grinding a rusty knife against his heart. Chapter 9, he drove to Mr. Hayes's house. In the 3 years of their engagement, this was only his second visit. The first was when he had come to ask for her hand. "Hello, Mr. Hayes. I'm here to take Aurora home." He stood awkwardly across from Mr. Hayes, holding gifts of fruit and a box set. Mr. Hayes frowned. "My daughter isn't here." Ethan's lips were pressed into a thin line. Accustomed to being in control, he rarely spoke in such a pleading tone. "Mr. Hayes, I know I hurt Aurora. I truly know I was wrong and I'll change." Mr. Hayes looked even more confused. "I'm not lying to you. My daughter really isn't here." Ethan studied Mr. Hayes's expression. He didn't seem to be lying, and there was no hint of resentment or anger towards him. He breathed a small sigh of relief. "Then please tell me where else she might be, so I can bring her home." "I've already arranged the wedding venue. I was too focused on work before and neglected her. I promise I'll balance family and work from now on." Ethan rattled on, trying to reassure Mr. Hayes, but his words only seemed to confuse the older man more. "Hold on a minute. Don't you know? You and my daughter are no longer engaged." Ethan stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. Engagement called off? How is that possible? Why wouldn't it be? I went to their house to cancel it myself, and my precious daughter returned that heirloom ring to the Blackwoods in person. Mr. Hayes crossed his arms, his eyes filled with scrutiny. Aurora hadn't told her father the details of what had happened between her and Ethan, but Mr. Hayes had always had his suspicions. Seeing Ethan like this, he understood, and his expression turned cold. I don't know what you're so busy with that you didn't even know my daughter canceled your engagement. She's been gone for so long, and you're only just now coming to me to look for her. It was the right decision to call it off. You don't deserve my daughter. Get out, you're not welcome here. The more Mr. Hayes spoke, the angrier he got, finally throwing all the gifts Ethan had brought out the door. Seeing Ethan standing there, stunned and unwilling to leave, Mr. Hayes grabbed a broom from the yard. I'm telling you, don't you ever think about bothering my daughter again? I don't care what you did in the past, but you broke my daughter's heart, and she will never forgive you. And neither will I. Ethan was chased out. He stood there, completely lost, like a man who had lost his soul. The engagement was canceled. He remembered the look of pure joy in Aurora's eyes, like a sky full of stars, when he had announced their engagement. How could the Aurora who loved him so much be the one to call it off? He didn't believe it. Mr. Hayes must be lying to him. Ethan stumbled back to the Blackwood estate. He walked right past Rosalie, who was recovering at home, as if she were invisible, and went straight to the study. Mom, was my engagement with Aurora canceled? Mrs. Blackwood was startled by his question. You didn't know. I thought you and Aurora had agreed on it. We didn't agree on anything. The emotions Ethan had suppressed all day finally erupted. I had no idea the engagement was canceled. Why didn't you tell me? Mrs. Blackwood was taken aback by his yelling, and her face hardened. Where are your manners? Who gave you permission to shout at me like that? Between you and Aurora, you were always the one making the decisions. Aurora listened to everything you said. You were engaged for 3 years without getting married because you kept putting it off, saying you were too busy with work. We Blackwoods were very fond of Aurora as a daughter-in-law. But when she came to us herself to break the engagement, we naturally assumed it was your decision. She was so obedient, so sensible, so in love with you. Why would she call it off unless you told her to? Every word from his mother seemed to drain a piece of Ethan's strength, until finally he could no longer stand and collapsed to the floor. That's right. She loved me so much. Why would she be the one to call it off? Standing at the door of the study, Rosalie overheard everything and bit her lip, her doe-like eyes filling with tears. Ethan didn't know how he got home. Lying on the bed he had slept in for 3 years, he buried his head in the pillow where Aurora used to lie, desperately trying to catch any lingering trace of her scent. But there was nothing. Only then did he truly realize that he had lost Aurora. He had lost the Aurora whose eyes and heart were filled with only him. He had lost the person who loved him most in this world. He tried not to think about her. Ethan believed that if he just accepted this reality, he would be fine. Because the person he loved was Rosalie, and Rosalie was right by his side. Now that Aurora was gone, he could be with Rosalie. Rosalie was very considerate. Even with her injured leg, she moved into his apartment to take care of him. Ethan tried to pretend that nothing had happened and live a normal life. But when he took a suit out of the closet, he would think of Aurora. He desperately wanted to find Aurora, to go back to how things were. Chapter 10. Aurora used to thoughtfully pair a tie with each of his shirts every day. When she tied his tie for him, she would look like a proud little cat in the mirror's reflection. Now, Rosalie would also try to pick out his ties. This yellow one matches today's suit better. But he was so used to Aurora's fixed pairings that he rejected it without a second thought. The yellow one is part of a set. I'll just wear this one today. He tied his own tie automatically. Staring at his own reflection in the mirror, his eyes traced the ghost of Aurora's figure over and over. Rosalie noticed his gaze, and her eyes reddened. Brother, can't we change the pairings? I used to be the one who picked out your clothes, and you always listened to me. Ethan's hands paused. That's right. Wasn't this the scene he had imagined countless times? But why? Why was the figure in his mind now another woman's? Rosalie, it's okay, brother, it's okay. I'll make up for the last 3 years. I'll make up for it. Brother, you should go to work. The moment he was pushed out the door, Ethan could clearly hear Rosalie's soft sobs. His hand clenched around his briefcase, but in the end, he still chose to go to the office. He couldn't face Rosalie right now because he couldn't even understand his own heart. When he got to the office, his assistant rushed over. "Mr. Blackwood, I've checked the flight records for the past month, and my friend at the police department also looked into it. Miss Hayes has no recent spending records or hotel stays anywhere in the country. Could she have gone abroad?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "It's possible. Can you check international records?" The assistant looked troubled. "With my resources, I can manage domestic checks, but international searches are a bit beyond my reach. Just do your best. I'll reimburse you for all expenses. Finding her is the most important thing." With Aurora's sudden disappearance, he realized he didn't know any of her friends, and Mr. Hayes would just chase him away. He had no way of finding any trace of her. All he could do was cast a wide net like this, hoping to catch even the slightest bit of information. After work, Ethan sat at his desk, watching the clock tick by. He didn't want to go home. Rosalie was good and gentle. Even though she knew something was wrong with him, she never pestered him with questions. It was because she was so good that he didn't know how to face her. He felt so confused. The figure in his heart was sometimes Rosalie, sometimes Aurora. He couldn't figure it out. Seeing him still at the office so late, his secretary knew something was on his mind. "Mr. Blackwood, would you like to get a drink?" Ethan nodded. At the bar, Ethan started downing drink after drink. The secretary tried to stop him, but he wouldn't let go of the bottle. "I just want to get really drunk. Maybe if I'm drunk, I'll be able to see clearly who it is." He didn't know how much he drank. He only knew that his vision was getting blurrier. The lights turned into a kaleidoscope, spinning beautifully before his eyes. Brother, wake up." It seemed like someone was calling him. Ethan tried to rally, forcing his eyes open. The first thing he saw was a pair of familiar eyes. Aurora, where did you go? I've been looking so hard for you. Why won't you listen to my explanation? I said I would marry you. I really meant it. Please don't leave me, okay? I know I was wrong." Ethan hugged the woman in front of him, but she didn't move or make a sound. He thought Aurora was still angry at him. "Don't be mad at me anymore. I'll be good to you from now on. I really know I was wrong, Aurora." Suddenly, something cold splashed against his face. Ice cubes hit his cheeks, stinging. Ethan sobered up a bit and the world stopped spinning. He could see clearly now. The person standing in front of him wasn't Aurora, it was Rosalie. "Wake up, I'm not Aurora, I'm Rosalie." Rosalie's eyes were red, her small body trembling. "Rosalie, I'm sorry, brother, I shouldn't have thrown that at you. Does it hurt?" Rosalie's soft hand touched his face. She was clearly the one who was hurt, yet she was still worried about him. "Brother, you're just used to it. You're used to seeing her as me. What you're feeling now is just confusion. The person you love is me, not her. Aurora is just a substitute, she's just a substitute." Ethan suddenly pushed Rosalie's hand away. He reeked of alcohol, but his eyes were deadly serious. "She is not a substitute." Chapter 11. Rosalie trembled even more violently, looking as if she might shatter at any moment. "She's not a substitute. If she's not a substitute, then why did you choose her 3 years ago? Wasn't it because she has the same eyes as me? If she's not a substitute, why did you kiss me against the wall at the family dinner? Your fiancé was right there at the table. If she's not a substitute, why did you abandon her every single time to come running to me? You even maliciously questioned her intentions, even after I tried to explain." Ethan was rendered speechless by her questions. But with everything out in the open, he could finally see his own heart clearly. He looked down at the ice cubes melting on the floor. He began to answer. "At first, I also thought I was just using her as a substitute. 3 years ago, your confession was so intense and sudden. I was afraid of losing you, but I was also afraid of those overwhelming emotions. I chose her not just because she had eyes like yours, but because when she looked at me, her eyes were filled with a pure, restrained joy. Her love felt safer. I chose to get engaged to her to push you away, to give myself time to figure out if what we had was really love. I thought about it for a long time, but I never really found an answer. As I spent more time with Aurora, I started to notice her more and more. This quiet girl who never fought for attention, who always had a gentle smile when she looked at me. I realized I was starting to like her. So I got drunk and slept with her. I felt an intense guilt that night. I felt like I had wronged you and I had wronged her. I numbed myself by believing I was just using her as your substitute. Yes, that's what I thought. But when did things change? I can't say for sure. But I know the person in my heart right now is named Aurora. Hearing his answer, Rosalie burst into tears. Brother, how could you do this to me? How could you? I'm sorry. But this is the first time I've truly faced my own heart. Even though this apology is late, the person I love is Aurora. A loud slap echoed as it landed on Ethan's face. Rosalie ran out, crying. This time, Ethan didn't chase after her. He knew he couldn't live without Aurora. Every day without her felt like he was suffocating, struggling to breathe. The moment he realized he loved Aurora, an avalanche of regret crashed down on him. What had he done? In the end, his assistant drove him home. Sitting in the car, staring at the dark, empty apartment, Ethan found himself asking, I made my girlfriend incredibly angry. How do I win her back? The assistant didn't know the details, but from Ethan's recent behavior, he could guess the general situation. Miss Hayes loves you a lot. I'm sure she wouldn't really leave you. Maybe she'll come back when the wedding starts. Hearing this, a spark of hope ignited in Ethan. Yes, you're right. He knew how much Aurora loved him. How could she really just leave and never come back? The wedding would proceed as planned. She was the bride. This was the wedding of her dreams. She would definitely come back, she had to. The next day, Ethan announced that his wedding would take place in 1 week. Worried that Aurora wouldn't hear the news, he even paid for a massive marketing campaign, making it a viral sensation online. He poured money into international media as well, ensuring that as long as Aurora was on this planet, she would see it. Not only that, but he also personally designed and crafted a one-of-a-kind bracelet. He would be waiting to put it on her wrist at the wedding. Ethan waited with bated breath. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The venue was filled with guests. When the time came, all eyes turned to the entrance. Suddenly, the doors opened. A woman in a wedding dress made her grand entrance. Ethan's pupils dilated. He was so nervous he forgot to breathe. She was backlit by the light. For a moment, he couldn't see her face clearly. But as she slowly walked closer, her limping gait made Ethan's heart sink. Seeing this, Mrs. Blackwood shot to her feet. Rosalie, what are you doing here? What are you wearing? Rosalie's makeup was exquisite, but her hands, clutching the wedding dress, revealed her nervousness. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I know this is hard for you to accept, but I can't hide it any longer. With that, she slowly looked up at Ethan. I am the adopted daughter of the Blackwood family. From the moment I can remember, I had the best brother in the world. But as I grew up, when I learned that this brother was not related to me by blood, I couldn't see him as just a brother anymore. I love him. I've loved him since I was a girl. On my 18th birthday, I confessed to him. He panicked and sent me to study abroad. Now I'm back, and I want to confess to him one more time. Ethan, will you marry me? Ethan looked at the small, defiant figure before him. Her voice was trembling as she spoke. He felt a pang of pity for her, but it was only a brother's pity for his sister. I'm sorry. It was my fault for letting you get confused. In my heart, you've only ever been my sister. Maybe there was a moment when I thought otherwise, but now you are just my sister. The person I love isn't here. Her name is... Stop, don't say any more. I understand. As if the pain was too much to bear, Rosalie cut him off. The wedding devolved into a farce and ended in disarray. Chapter 12. With Aurora's failure to appear, Ethan was thrown into a complete panic. The news that had spread across the internet yielded nothing, like searching for a needle in a haystack. With no other options, Ethan went and knelt before Mr. Hayes's door. Mr. Hayes, I'm begging you, please give Aurora and me one more chance. I truly know I was wrong. I can't live without her. Look, this is a bracelet I made for her myself. It symbolizes my eternal and unchanging love for her. I truly know I was wrong. When her father called her, his voice was filled with a weary sigh. From his tone, she learned of all the absurd things Ethan had been doing. Especially when she heard he had crafted a handmade bracelet for her. Aurora couldn't help but laugh. The laughter soon faded from her lips, replaced by an endless bitterness that spread through her heart. Everything she had once fantasized about had finally come true. The man she had loved with all her heart for 7 years had finally placed her in his heart as well. But what did it matter now? Her heart had already been ground to dust. Even if he tried to piece it back together, it would just be a pile of sand, scattered by the slightest breeze. What good was a custom-made bracelet? Her heart could not be repaired. The heart that loved Ethan had been personally crushed by him, buried deep underground, never to see the light of day again. "Dad, don't tell him where I am." Her father was, of course, on her side, but there was a hint of pity in his voice. He was such a fine young man, and now he's a complete wreck. The elder Blackwoods even came to talk to me about it. She knew her father. He was an exceptionally kind man. But that kindness had its limits, and it stopped where her pain began. She didn't want him to worry, nor did she want him to feel guilty for his kindness now. So, she said it plainly. "Dad, Ethan's pain right now isn't 1/10,000th of what I felt." He didn't speak, but she could hear his breathing become unsteady. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and her dad had raised her all by himself. Like all fathers, he wasn't good with words and didn't know how to comfort a sensitive and fragile daughter. But he knew one thing. Anyone who hurt his daughter was his sworn enemy. Sure enough, the pity in his voice vanished, replaced by a towering rage. "Then you don't have to worry. I won't let a single word slip. I'll make sure that boy doesn't have an easy time of it." She didn't know what happened after that, nor did she want to. Professor Wallace said her work was excellent and wanted to help her organize an art exhibition. She needed to pour 100% of her energy into it. As for Ethan's ridiculous antics, they had long since become irrelevant to her. Chapter 13. After hanging up the phone, Mr. Hayes immediately grabbed a broom and went to the door. Ethan was still kneeling there, motionless, letting fallen leaves settle on him. When he saw the door open, he thought there was hope. Instead, he was met with a solid whack from the broom. "Get lost. If I see you here again, I'll beat you to death. Don't stand there looking pitiful. My daughter can't see it and she doesn't want to." Acting so devoted now, where were you before? "It's too late." Ethan, undeterred, came back 2 more times, but each time he was unceremoniously swept out the door. He began to miss Aurora more and more. Walking down the street, he would remember that Aurora couldn't eat strawberry cake, but she probably could eat mango cake. Aurora loved mangoes. Every time she ate one, she would offer him the sweetest bite. Watching a movie, he would think, this is the film Aurora had wanted to see for so long, the one she kept pestering him to take her to. It was a beautiful story. The protagonist had a crush on the male lead for 10 years, and in the end, they got together. It was a happy ending, but Ethan found himself crying. He truly was blind and clueless. Why did it take him so long to see how wonderful Aurora was? As he wandered aimlessly through a shopping mall, he would see clothes in the windows and instinctively imagine how they would look on Aurora. He bought every outfit he thought would look good on her. But the house was empty. There was no one there to share his joy, no one to celebrate with. He tried to bury himself in work, but the high-intensity schedule and irregular lifestyle made his stomach problems worse. Lying in a hospital bed, he started to miss the nourishing porridge Aurora used to make for him. The medicine no longer worked. His stomach had been better for the past 3 years thanks to Aurora, who had come up with all sorts of recipes for him every day. But now Aurora was gone, and there was no one left to worry about his pain. When he had to have stomach surgery, only Rosalie was by his side. "Brother, please don't hurt your body like this." Ethan looked at Rosalie and felt more and more like a piece of trash. "Don't worry about me. I deserve all of this." Perhaps his eyes were too lifeless because Rosalie burst into tears. "I know where Aurora is." Ethan, who had been staring blankly just a second ago, suddenly sat up straight. "Really?" The doctors and nurses beside him warned him not to move so abruptly. Rosalie came to his side, nodding frantically. "You just focus on the surgery. When you get out, I'll tell you." The surgery was a success. The first thing Ethan did when he was able was find Rosalie. Rosalie looked at Ethan's eager eyes and laughed at herself. "It seems you really want to find her, don't you?" Ethan opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. "You need to let your stomach heal. Give me half a month. In half a month, I'll give you the information." Rosalie sat beside him, preparing his post-op care items. Ethan was clearly getting angry. "How could you lie to me?" Rosalie gave a self-deprecating smile. "You lied to me for so many years. Can't I lie to you for once? It's only half a month. Can't you even wait that long?" Ethan lowered his eyes. As much as he didn't want to trust Rosalie, this was the only lead he had. He couldn't miss it. "Fine, half a month." Half a month later, Ethan was discharged from the hospital. Rosalie kept her promise. "She's in the United States, holding an art exhibition. I know some people there from when I was studying abroad." Worried that Ethan wouldn't believe her, she showed him a friend's social media post. The exhibition runs for 2 weeks. Tomorrow is the last day. Ethan looked at the familiar yet blurry figure in the photo. He knew in an instant that it was Aurora. He was ecstatic. "Thank you, I'm going there right now. Wait, I'm going with you." Rosalie's voice came from behind him. Ethan stopped, his expression hardening. Rosalie slowly stood up. "I just want to see how much you really love her, and to see if she would ever forgive you." That night, the two of them flew out of the country, arriving in the United States the next day. Ethan didn't sleep a wink. The moment they landed, he immediately took a taxi to Aurora's exhibition. When he stood on the street and saw that familiar silhouette in the distance, it felt like a dream. It had been so long. Aurora had cut her hair short. The woman who was always so meticulously put together was now bare-faced, looking even more pure and beautiful. "Go on." Rosalie stood behind Ethan, speaking softly. Ethan gave her a grateful look, then walked towards Aurora without a moment's hesitation. Chapter 14. When Aurora saw Ethan suddenly appear, it would be a lie to say she wasn't surprised. But what surprised her more was his condition. The meticulously neat and precise Ethan Blackwood was now disheveled, with stubble on his face. "Can we talk?" Ethan's voice was hoarse, his eyes bloodshot. Aurora hesitated for a moment, then nodded. At a coffee shop, she ordered a cappuccino. Ethan smiled faintly. "You still remember what I like to drink?" She paused, then shook her head. "No, this is for me. The coffee here tastes different from back home. See what you'd like to order." The light in Ethan's eyes dimmed again. "I'll have an Americano." After the coffee arrived, Aurora glanced at her watch. "I don't have much time. Was there something you needed?" Ethan looked nervous, his lips pressed into a thin line, opening and closing as if struggling to find words. "I made this bracelet for you myself. I named it Redeemed Love. It means that for the rest of my life, I will atone for the love I failed to cherish. This is my heart and my vow." Aurora looked at the exquisite bracelet in Ethan's hand. Hearing about it on the phone had felt surreal, but seeing it now made the sense of irony even more real. "It's beautiful." Hearing her say that, a smile bloomed on Ethan's lips. "I knew you'd like it. Let me put it on for you." As he stood to come over to her, she stopped him. "Wait, I only said it was beautiful. I didn't say I would accept it." Ethan's hand hung awkwardly in the air. "Why?" "First, I don't like the name. Second, I don't want to have any relationship with you in the future." She spoke bluntly, and she could see the color drain from Ethan's face. He clenched his fists nervously, his gaze darting around before finally settling on her hands. Confused, she then heard his low voice. "Why did you call off the engagement?" She couldn't help but laugh. "What do you think?" Ethan seemed to shrink in on himself, his hands twisting in his lap. "When did you find out?" "At the family dinner when Rosalie came back. I saw you pull her into the study." Ethan's head drooped lower. "I'm sorry," she smiled freely. "There's nothing to be sorry for." "You don't blame me?" Ethan looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "How could I not? I even hated you." Aurora's answer was casual, but Ethan's back went ramrod straight. "I loved you for 7 years. I thought we would finally have our happy ending, but in the end, I discovered I was just a substitute you found. How could I not hate you in that moment?" "I'm sorry. There's nothing to be sorry for. As they say in the movies, if it's one-sided, you have to be willing to accept the loss. To put it bluntly, you just didn't love me. If you love someone, you cherish them. If you don't, you can justify anything you do." She had figured it all out long ago. The initial resentment and anger were just bitterness over her 7 years of devotion yielding no return. But thankfully, she finally understood. Sunk costs shouldn't influence major decisions. So what if it was 7 years? It was better than wasting another 7 years on him. Seeing her like this, Ethan seemed to panic. He scrambled to grab her hand, but she skillfully dodged him. His hand closed on empty air, and an expression of helplessness she had never seen before crossed his face. "Aurora, I'm sorry. I was wrong before, but I do love you. After you left, I realized I love you more than anything. I know it's too late to say anything now. The damage is done. But please, give me a chance. Give me a chance to make it up to you, okay? I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, loving you properly." Looking at Ethan's tear-filled eyes, Aurora knew he was telling the truth. In that moment, her own eyes reddened. She had finally waited for the day he would turn around and see her. Waited for him to be willing to say he loved her. waited for him to say, with tears in his eyes, that he couldn't live without her. But now, she no longer wanted him. As she wiped away a tear, Aurora saw a flicker of hope ignite in Ethan's eyes. In the next second, she mercilessly extinguished it. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm just feeling sorry for the Aurora of 7 years ago. It's impossible between us. Like I said, in my world, I don't feel like you owe me anything. Love is love, and not loving is not loving. There's no debt and certainly no need for compensation. Right now, I don't love you. So no matter what you say, it won't change my decision. The reason I cried was to mourn the me of 7 years ago, and the love I thought was so humiliating. Well, this reunion of old friends should come to an end. I have work to do, so I'll be going. She stood up slowly and paid the bill on her way out. As she stepped out of the coffee shop, Aurora saw Rosalie hiding not far away. Rosalie still looked just as innocent and fragile. Aurora smiled and nodded at her, a silent greeting. Then, she threw herself back into her work at the exhibition. All the pieces in the show were created after she came to the United States. Professor Wallace said her artistry had reached a new peak. He said he was very glad she had come to study in the U.S. Aurora was glad too. Chapter 15. After the exhibition closed, Ethan was still waiting for her outside. Aurora ignored him and headed for her car. But to her surprise, he brazenly got into her passenger seat. When Aurora turned to look at him, his eyes were filled with exhaustion. I just want to sleep for a bit. Think of it as taking in an old friend. Please don't kick me out. She was utterly speechless. I refuse to believe the great Mr. Blackwood can't afford a hotel room. This whole persistent pest act doesn't suit you. I suggest you drop the pity party. Have you forgotten? You're the one who hates manipulative people who play the victim. A sharp pain shot through Ethan's chest. He suddenly remembered when Aurora was in the hospital with a high fever, he had called her manipulative. Was this how she felt then? No, it must have been 1,000 times worse. He finally understood why Aurora had given up on him. When someone who has held up their heart for years discovers that their devotion is worthless in the other person's eyes, even discarded like trash, how could they possibly persist in such a self-destructive act? I really know I was wrong. Can't you just give us one more chance? I'm begging you. She took a deep breath and looked at him with grave seriousness. I didn't want things between us to get this ugly, but since you insist on being relentless, I won't hold back either. She took off her coat and rolled up the sleeve of her long shirt. See for yourself. Aurora pointed to the dense cluster of burn scars on her arm. When I was burned, you, my fiancé, saw Rosalie get hurt and didn't hesitate for a second to rush to her side. Let's be clear, it's not wrong for you to love someone else. But you can't love someone else and shamelessly hurt me at the same time. Look at these scars. They really hurt, but not as much as my heart hurt in that moment. I kept these scars as a reminder to myself. If you don't love yourself, you'll only end up covered in wounds. Only by loving yourself can you find true salvation. Ethan stared at the mottled, ugly scars, his entire heart feeling like it was being crushed in a vice. What in God's name had he done? This was Aurora, a woman who would tear up just from getting a shot. How much pain must she have been in? I'm sorry. You don't have to be. I don't blame you. In fact, I thank you. Your heartless actions woke me up completely. She rolled down her sleeve and put her coat back on. Looking at the man writhing in agony before her, she showed no mercy. All right, get out of the car. I don't think we have anything left to talk about. It's not safe here at night. Rosalie is a young woman all by herself. You should go be with her. Ethan, who was about to give up, suddenly heard Rosalie's name and clung to a shred of hope. What if the reason Aurora wouldn't forgive him was because of Rosalie? What if Aurora still thought he was just using her as a substitute? Ethan grasped this as his last straw and turned back to explain, his voice trembling. I don't love her. I used to think she was the one I loved, but now the person I love is you. I was just confused back then. I didn't understand my own heart, but I understand it now. I've made things clear with her. I swear I will never let you get hurt again. There is no one else in my world but you. Aurora frowned at his display. And what does that have to do with me? Who you love, whether you love Rosalie or not, has absolutely nothing to do with me. Now, please get out of my car. Ethan suddenly burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. Why won't you give us one last chance? I really know I was wrong. Let me stay by your side and make it up to you. Why won't you even grant me that? Looking at his self-pitying, world-is-ending act, Aurora's anger flared. "Shut up, what right do you have to cry in front of me? You played with my heart, made me look like a fool who was kept in the dark for 3 years. You went to Rosalie in front of me time and time again, ignored my needs, even slandered me. What right do you have to cry here? I went abroad. If I had died in an accident instead, would you go to my grave and kill yourself for me now? We're adults. Stop acting so childish and disgusting. Don't force me to turn the last shred of decency between us into ugliness." Her words were merciless and final. Ethan stood frozen for a long time before numbly getting out of the car. The moment he was steady on his feet, she drove away without the slightest hesitation. She thought that would be the end of it, but late that night, she received a phone call. Rosalie's helpless voice came through the receiver. "It's Rosalie. My brother got drunk and into a fight. He's been taken to the hospital. I don't know anyone here. Could you please come?" She sat up in bed, rubbing her temples. A drunk and a young woman on the streets of America were not a safe combination. The hospital address. Chapter 16. Arriving at the hospital, Aurora wrapped her coat tighter around herself. It was late autumn and the wind was biting. The hospital was surprisingly busy, with drunks and hoodlums scattered everywhere. She found Rosalie just as she was being cornered in the restroom. If she hadn't heard the cry for help, she might have been too late. Using the taser she carried with her, she stunned the man. Rosalie, like a frightened rabbit, desperately pulled at her torn clothes. Fortunately, Aurora had thought ahead and brought an extra coat. She draped it over Rosalie's shoulders and then got her a cup of hot water. After a few minutes, Rosalie calmed down. "Thank you, I'm so glad you were here. I just needed to use the restroom." Rosalie's voice was thick with fear. Aurora patted her on the shoulder, offering silent comfort. "Why?" Rosalie's sudden question caught Aurora off guard. "Why don't you hate me?" Rosalie's eyes were wide and watery, completely serious and clear. She smiled. "Why would I hate you? You never tried to harm me. You never falsely accused me. The few times you tried to provoke me were like a child's childish trick. I know you've always felt guilty towards me, and that's enough." From the moment they first met, from the look in Rosalie's eyes, she knew. This young woman didn't have a bad heart. She was just trying to fight for the person she loved, and in the process, she inevitably hurt Aurora. But for Rosalie, Aurora's existence was also a form of pain. After all, she was just the substitute, and Rosalie was the original. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. If I had known my brother's heart truly belonged to you, I never would have come back and gotten between you. I just thought that my brother and I were in love, and that love could conquer all obstacles. I couldn't just give up," Rosalie sobbed, "but I never thought that I would be the third party. I'm sorry. After you left, my brother missed you so much. He thinks about you constantly. I was wrong. It was all my fault. Can you please forgive him?" Aurora looked at the heartbroken girl and ruffled her hair, a sense of pity welling up in her eyes. "How could this be your fault? I'll tell you the outcome first. I will not go back to him, because Ethan doesn't deserve to be loved. As you said, he did love you. That wasn't your imagination. But he didn't dare to admit it, didn't dare to accept it, didn't dare to take responsibility. Faced with your sincere and passionate love, his only response was to run away. And in the face of my 7-year pursuit, he just complacently enjoyed his position of power. He's not worthy of love. He wavered between 2 women, letting them exhaust their hearts and cry their eyes out for him. Why should I come running back just because he's decided to turn around now? This isn't about anger or holding a grudge. It's about me realizing, truly and completely, that compared to loving him, loving myself is a more valuable and worthwhile endeavor." A starry light began to shine in Rosalie's eyes. Looking at her, Aurora saw a reflection of herself from 7 years ago. The girl who was willing to bleed for love had spent 7 years transforming into the woman she was today. It was painful, but it was worth it. Before she left, she went to Ethan's room. He had been beaten badly and was unconscious. Even in his sleep, he was mumbling her name. She leaned close to his ear. "Give up. I will never forgive you in this lifetime." After saying that, she helped arrange for his transfer to another hospital and called his parents. Ethan was flown back to his home country while still unconscious. After that, he never appeared in her life again. Aurora began holding art exhibitions all over the country, keeping herself incredibly busy. Time passed. On the other side of the ocean, Ethan lay in a hospital bed. His stomach problems had developed into stomach cancer. The Blackwood family tried everything to get him treated. But Ethan had lost the will to live. Rosalie stayed by his side, fulfilling her final duty as a sister. Before his last surgery, Ethan grabbed her hand and pleaded, "I want to see her one more time. Tell her I want to see her." Rosalie hesitated, then shook her head. "I won't go find her for you. Your life is your own. It's not a tool to blackmail or burden others. You've already wronged Aurora enough. Are you really going to disturb her happiness in your final moments?" Rosalie's eyes filled with tears. "You are selfish to the core. You don't deserve to be loved. If you truly know you were wrong, then you'll survive this and spend the rest of your life atoning. Don't use this pathetic, cheap act to manipulate people. Just like last time, if you can make it out of this alive, I'll tell you where she is." Ethan's hand slowly fell, his eyes filled with a dead, tragic sorrow. The surgery began. Chapter 17. 2 years later, Aurora's touring exhibition had its final stop back in her home country. Stepping onto the familiar soil once again, a wave of happiness washed over her. Her father picked her up and had a huge home-cooked meal waiting for her. Eating the familiar flavors of her hometown, Aurora was so happy she was at a loss for words. Her father told her about all the changes at home and in the neighborhood. When he got to the Blackwood family, he visibly hesitated, afraid to say more. But for her, the story of the Blackwoods was a distant memory. "It's okay, Dad, you can tell me anything." "How are Mrs. Blackwood and Mr. Blackwood doing?" Her father sighed. "It's because of that son of theirs. The whole ordeal aged them 10 years. "What happened?" "The Blackwood boy got stomach cancer. He almost didn't make it off the operating table several times. He's hanging on by a thread now, but there's no telling when it might relapse. He's their only son. How could they not be worried?" Hearing that Ethan had cancer, I was surprised to find I felt nothing at all. Thinking about how he used to abuse his body, this outcome wasn't unexpected. "So how is he now?" "I heard he went abroad for treatment and is doing much better, but the boy won't listen to anyone, just works himself to the bone. Your old friends Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood are worried sick. And Rosalie? That young lady is still with the family. You could say she's running the whole show now. If it weren't for her, the Blackwood company might have gone under. And she's getting married soon. The groom is from a wealthy family of equal standing. The two companies are merging. It's a powerful alliance." She made a few sympathetic comments, and the conversation moved on to other things. No matter what had happened in the past, for her now, it was just a brief topic of conversation, a small piece of gossip. After a few days of rest, she began to busy herself with the details of the exhibition. On the opening day, a surprising number of people showed up, including many familiar faces. The day passed quickly with reunions, conversations, and explanations of her artwork. As she glanced out the window at the sunset, she thought she saw a familiar silhouette, but she didn't try to get a better look. As the last rays of sunlight faded, her unrequited love, which had never truly begun, finally came to an end. Chapter 18. Ethan survived the surgery. Rosalie told him Aurora's whereabouts. He attended every one of her exhibitions, but never showed his face, because he knew that all the pain he was experiencing was what he deserved. At one point, he felt that living like this was too painful and wanted to end it all. But Rosalie was right. He had lost Aurora because he was a coward, afraid to admit his own feelings. Was he really going to end his life so easily now? No, that would be letting himself off too easy. Ethan held onto his life, feeling the pain of every remaining second. Only when he was at Aurora's exhibitions did the pain ease, if only for a moment. 2 years passed like this. Ethan had grown accustomed to living with the pain. The day before Rosalie's wedding, she came to see him. "Brother, if you want me to, I can call off the wedding right now." Ethan looked at Rosalie. With the passage of time, she had started to resemble Aurora more and more. He often found himself confused, but he warned himself. Aurora would never look at him with such gentleness. He could not make that mistake again. "As long as you're happy, brother will support you." This time, Rosalie didn't cry. She held back her tears, refusing to let them fall. "Okay. Thank you, brother. You have to come to the wedding." Rosalie turned and left, finally letting go of the love she had harbored since she was a girl. Ethan watched her walk away, then slowly turned his gaze back to the sketchbook in his hands. In the moments when he couldn't see Aurora, He, like she once did, sketched her face over and over again. The tip of the pencil glided across the paper. It was as if Aurora was always by his side, as if she had never left. A year later, his body finally gave out. Lying on his deathbed, Rosalie whispered to him, "Aurora is in the country right now. I'll ask her to come see you. Don't let her know. To her, I'm just an irrelevant person. I don't want to disturb her anymore." The end.